You have only vague memories of learning about subjects and objects in elementary school, and the mere thought of it makes your eyes glaze over. I will do my best to clarify things today on Hebrew Help with Sapir. Welcome back to Hebrew Help. This video is a quick introduction to the grammatical terms subject and object. I'm warning you now, it might get ugly. These terms are all about a noun phrase's relationship to the verb of the sentence. And a noun phrase is a noun with all of the parts that go with it, like articles and adjectives and other descriptors. So noun phrases can be really long, or they can be just one noun, or even not even a noun, just a pronoun. So I don't know about the rest of the world, but if you were raised in the US, you may remember from elementary school or from maybe middle school, starting off a sentence diagram by drawing one horizontal line and then a short vertical line that crossed in the middle. And what goes on the left is the subject. It is the noun that is doing the verb. And on the right side, you get the verb. And then all kinds of other things may branch off from there. But the best way to figure out a subject, especially with a language like English where the verb doesn't change a lot according to the subject, is to just figure out what the verb is and then say who or what is doing this. So let's look at this sentence. Jeff checks the weather every day. What is the verb? Well, it's the word that you can add ing or make it a past tense, usually by adding an ed, or making it future by putting will in front of it. So checks is your verb in this sentence. Now, to figure out the subject, you ask, who checks? Who is doing the checking? And the answer is Jeff. Jeff checks. And that means that Jeff is the subject. Now, this can get a little bit difficult because not all verbs are actions. And so all of the be verbs, which are am, is, are, was, and were, and being, they are all verbs, but there's no action involved there. You're basically just equating one thing with another thing, or you're giving a description of something. And there are a lot of other verbs that are like the be verb, but aren't the be verb. So we've got seems, looks, sounds, feels. There are a lot of them. And if you can replace it with one of the be forms, is, are, was, were, then, and the meaning is roughly the same, then that's your verb. And so the subject is the noun or pronoun that is doing the verb or that is something. As for the word object, this is a noun phrase that is basically not the subject. There are three kinds of objects that I can think of, and they are direct objects, indirect objects, and objects of prepositions. Of these three types, objects of a preposition, in my opinion, are the easiest to recognize because they never come directly after a verb. They come after a preposition. And this is relatively universal among languages that have prepositions. But when it comes to direct and indirect objects, the definitions are really murky. No lie. If you Google what is a direct object, you will get the answer. It is the recipient of the action of a transitive verb. And if you Google what is a transitive verb, you will get the answer that it's a verb that must take a direct object. Thank you, Circular Reasoning, for warning me that this next part is going to be a little messed up. I think this is the best that they can come up with because what direct objects and indirect objects look like and the rules for how they are used really varies from language to language. Usage can also vary from language to language. So in English and in Spanish, if we ask someone a question, that someone is the indirect object, but it is definitely not an indirect object in Hebrew. For one, Hebrew does not really have indirect objects. Some claim that Hebrew's indirect objects use the preposition le, which is not true. But even if it were true, then asking someone a question would still not be considered an indirect object in Hebrew. Because in Hebrew, when you ask someone a question, that someone is the object of the preposition et, not le. We say, Ani sha'alti et nir. She'ela. I asked Nir a question. Similarly, in English and in Spanish, the verb for help takes a direct object. The person who's being helped is a direct object. But in Hebrew, after la'azor, we use the preposition le and then the person. So these are just some examples to show that we should not be trying to define a direct or indirect object by saying, oh, it must be a direct object in this language because it's a direct object in that other language. It's just not true. Every language is different. I'm sorry. I can feel your eyes glazing over already. And this just proves my main point that direct and indirect objects are not some straightforward black and white thing. But there is one more thing that I want to mention about direct objects, and that is that typically a sentence can be changed around so that a direct object can become the subject of a passive voice sentence. So let me give you this example. If I say, I photographed Sarah, I is the subject, photographed is the verb, and Sarah is the direct object. So I can change around this sentence to say that Sarah was photographed by me. It changes the focus of the sentence, but you can see that the same action is being described in both sentences. Now look at this sentence. I took a photo of Sarah. It is basically saying the same thing, right? Except that now a photo is the direct object, and Sarah is the object of the preposition of. So even though Sarah was photographed by me is a perfectly fine sentence, we cannot say something like, Sarah was taken a photo of by me. But we can say, a photo of Sarah was taken by me. So this technique of determining whether a noun phrase is a direct object by trying to make a passive voice sentence is somewhat reliable, although not without its issues. Why do we even care, you may ask? Well, all of this matters to Hebrew learners, specifically when they are trying to figure out the word et. Many people call it a direct object marker, and in some ways it is, but in other ways it isn't. And of course, if you don't know what a direct object is at all, you might be thinking, well, that was not helpful in the slightest. And if you are more confused than ever, I do apologize because I am not intentionally trying to make things complicated. Grammar is complicated. I have a master's degree in linguistics, and even I had to look up some definitions of definite object to see all of the various parameters. And do you know what I found? That all of these linguistic authorities have different definitions, and not one of them is true all of the time or fits every language. And none of them definitively answered my question about the word et. So if the only thing that was accomplished here was that you realized that direct objects are confusing, then that's okay. To be able to benefit from the video on et, All you really need to be able to do is distinguish subjects from objects. So remember that the subject is the one that's doing the verb, and that's all you need to know. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. See you next time.